The millionaire was paralyzed when he saw the love of his youth selling flowers on the street. He thought she had died 20 years ago. What he discovered left him indifferent. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. John Wilson was a man admired by many. He had achieved everything expected of a successful life: wealth, power, and a family business that was a leader in the industrial sector. However, beneath the impeccable facade and the always serious expression, there was someone stuck in a cold routine where emotions and distractions had no place. For more than 20 years, his life revolved around the company, shaped under the strict influence of Robert, his father, an authoritarian man who saw feelings as obstacles to success. Every day began the same way. At 6 in the morning, John was already up, checking emails while drinking a bitter coffee in his minimalist apartment. Then, he would head to the office, where he followed a meticulously planned schedule. It seemed that by living this way, he was able to ignore the emptiness he carried in his chest. An emptiness that had a name: Serena. The great love of his life had tragically passed away in a car accident more than 2 decades ago. Not only Serena, but also the baby they were expecting. The loss had destroyed John, leaving him in a state of apathy from which he could never escape. One afternoon, after an exhausting meeting, John decided to change his routine a little. He chose to walk in a square before returning to work. It was not something he usually did, but the tranquility of the place attracted him. Sitting on a bench, he let himself be enveloped by the sounds of children playing and the laughter of couples passing by. Even though his thoughts were stuck in the past, something seemed different there. That was when he noticed, a few meters away, a woman selling flowers. At first, he just watched, but when he looked at her, he felt time stop. That woman, her hair, her eyes, and her smile. Everything about her reminded him of Serena. His heart, which had been beating mechanically for years, was now beating strongly. Could it be that, after all this time, Serena was standing in front of him? Unable to look away, John got up from the bench and walked towards her. Each step was filled with disbelief. When he was finally close enough, he took a deep breath and, with a trembling voice, murmured, "Good afternoon." The woman looked up and smiled kindly. "Good afternoon, sir. Which flower would you like to bring?" she asked, with a softness that made John shiver. The man expected some sign of recognition, but there was none. No reaction that indicated that the woman knew who he was. Disconcerted, he tried to maintain his composure. "A bouquet of roses, please." The woman handed him the arrangement with the same delicate smile. "I hope they're for someone special." Roses always brighten the day. John paid without realizing it and walked away, his legs shaking. When he looked back, he saw the woman serving another customer with the same sweetness. That night, John couldn't sleep a wink. The image of the woman in the square, who looked so much like Serena, haunted his mind like a ghost. Every gesture, every movement made his heart ache with the memory of his great love. Unable to bear the uncertainty, he decided he had to act. The next morning, he called Kevin, a trusted private investigator who had worked for his company several times. Without hesitation, he explained the situation with an intensity that surprised the professional. "Kevin, I need you to investigate a woman. It's important. I want to know who she is, where she came from, and everything you can find out." Although Kevin was intrigued, he knew that John wasn't the type to share personal details easily. He preferred not to ask unnecessary questions and accepted the task without delay. While the investigator began his work, John couldn't stay away from the square. In the following days, he returned several times, always hoping to see her again. And when he finally found her, he felt a mixture of relief and fear. He decided he couldn't approach her like John Wilson, the businessman known for his seriousness. Opting for something simpler, he introduced himself as Enrique, and with each visit, bought flowers. Little by little, I tried to prolong the conversations. That's how he found out her name was Natalie. Despite her kindness, there was something in her eyes that reflected a deep sadness, as if she carried a weight she couldn't express. One day, John decided to be more direct and asked, "Why do you sell flowers?" Natalie sighed, looking at the delicate petals she held. "Flowers are the only thing that gives me peace. I don't know why, but I've always felt like they connect me to something important, something I can't remember. It may seem strange, but I feel like I've lost something, even though I don't know what it is." Her words hit John like thunder. Was it possible that Natalie not only looked like Serena, but was somehow connected to her? John began to wonder if it was even possible that Serena had survived the accident but lost her memory. This idea consumed him, but he didn't know how to prove it. While Natalie continued with her gentle smile and her eyes filled with inexplicable sadness, John couldn't stop thinking about her. The resemblance to Serena was undeniable. Every time he saw her, hope, fear, and uncertainty mixed inside him as Kevin moved forward with the investigation. That quiet afternoon, John received a connection that would change everything. Kevin, his friend and researcher, spoke with an unusual tone of urgency. "Wait, Mr. Wilson. I discovered something interesting about Natalie." John frowned, intrigued. "What is it?" "There are no records of her before 15 years ago. It's as if she didn't exist until then. No birth certificate, no school records, no frequent doctor's appointments before that time." A chill ran down John's spine. The revelation was as strange as it was disturbing. Nothing? Not even a clue? "Nothing," Kevin confirmed. "Only recent records of sporadic consultations in public hospitals. Before that, a real mystery." John hung up the phone, stunned. That lack of information about Natalie not only added to the enigma around him but also fueled the possibility he feared and at the same time desired. She could be Serena, the woman he believed he had lost forever. Later, Kevin brought another discovery. There's something in her chart, indications of dissociative amnesia. John didn't fully understand. What does that mean? It's a condition in which a person loses part of their memories due to trauma. Natalie may have forgotten where she came from, or even who she really is. John felt the pieces fall into place. If Natalie were really Serena, her lack of memory would explain everything. Why she didn't recognize him, why she seemed so distant from her past. But another question arose. What could have caused this state? John, he determined to go deeper. The next day, he took an old box to Kevin's office that had been stored for over 20 years. Inside were photos, letters, and small souvenirs from Serena, as well as a police report of the accident that John never had the courage to examine in detail. "This is the accident report," John said, handing the papers to Kevin. "I always assumed Serena died instantly, but I never read it carefully. Maybe there's something that explains it all." Kevin analyzed the documents carefully, and one detail caught his attention. Serena's body was not identified at the scene. There is a note indicating that she was taken alive to a hospital and that she died during an emergency cesarean section. John was speechless. "Are you saying she arrived at the hospital alive?" "Yes," Kevin confirmed seriously. "At least, that's what this document indicates. But there's more. If Serena survived for any length of time, what happened to the baby?" The question echoed in John's mind. Everything seemed even more confusing. I want to know everything about the hospital, the doctors who were there, and any records from that day. Kevin nodded. I'll find out what I can. As John assimilated the weight of this information, he realized that his past still had secrets to reveal. If this story is holding you back, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. Meanwhile, Natalie began to experience flashes of memory. Disjointed images appeared in his dreams, always brief but intense. I saw a car speeding, a winding road, the sudden sound of braking, and then a crushing emptiness. At other times, she dreamed of a man whose face she could never see clearly, but who seemed strangely familiar. These fragments, confusing and disturbing, left her uneasy. I didn't have the courage to share it with anyone. Just caring for the flowers still brought some solace. One afternoon, as John bought a bouquet, Natalie looked at him with a reflective expression. "Do you know anything about me?" he asked in a hesitant voice. "Sometimes I feel like I already know you from somewhere. It's strange, isn't it?" John felt his heart race. It was the first time Natalie had mentioned anything that suggested a connection between the two. Trying to sound calm, he replied, "Maybe we've crossed paths at some point." Natalie shook her head, looking distant. "I don't know. It's like there's something about you that feels familiar, but I can't remember." John forced a smile, but inside he felt a storm of emotions. I was getting closer and closer to the truth, but I also knew that what I discovered could change everything. Meanwhile, Kevin continued with the investigation into the accident. One day, he summoned John to the office urgently. "Mr. Wilson, I think we found something important," he announced, handing over a report. John took the document with shaking hands. The title was clear: Analysis of Road Intervention 20 Years Ago. Kevin's face was serious. "What does that mean?" John asked, frowning. "That means your wife's accident might not have been an accident," Kevin replied gravely. The air became heavy. John felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "What are you talking about?" "The records show irregularities," Kevin explained. "There are modifications to the original files. Important names have been deleted and crucial details omitted. Most alarmingly, there are mentions of a suspicious vehicle involved in the incident, something that has never been officially reported." The revelation hit John like a blow. His heart was beating fast, mixing anger and disbelief. "Who would do something like that to me?" he asked, gritting his teeth. Kevin held his gaze steady. "That's what we need to find out. For now, I've located a doctor who was at the hospital that night, Enrique Guzman. This doctor is retired but lives on the outskirts of town. He can help us." The next day, John stood face to face with Dr. Guzman, a white-haired man with a tired expression who greeted him kindly. At first, the doctor had no memory of Serena or the accident, but when he saw the photos and the report, something changed. "Yes, I remember now," Guzman said, adjusting his glasses. "It was a very peculiar case. She arrived in critical condition, but we fought to save her. She was unconscious, unable to communicate, and the pregnancy was advanced. It was a life-or-death situation." John leaned forward anxiously. "The report says they both died. Is that true?" The doctor hesitated, his gaze distant. "I don't remember the exact details, but I think she survived initially. As for the baby, maybe it died during delivery. It was an extremely risky surgery." John felt a chill run down his spine. If Serena had survived, why had she never come back? And what had really happened to the child? The answers seemed closer, but the questions only grew. These words left John in shock, but Dr. Guzman, after a brief pause, added something that completely changed the course of the conversation. "Now that I think about it, there was someone else with her that day," the doctor said, as if a forgotten memory had resurfaced. John narrowed his eyes, his curiosity and tension growing. Who was that person? "It was a man," Dr. Guzman continued. "Elegant, probably in his 50s. He wore an expensive suit and seemed to know exactly what he was doing. He authorized the surgery when Serena arrived unconscious." John felt his heart stop. The description was unmistakable. Trying to remain calm, he asked, "Are you sure about that?" The doctor nodded slowly. "I never forget a face like his. He was very authoritative, even intimidating. I remember the hospital staff getting nervous around him." John clenched his fists. He didn't need any more confirmation. The man who had been there that day, the one responsible for making decisions about Serena and her daughter's lives, was her own father, Robert Wilson. Robert had always been openly hostile to Serena. From the beginning, he had made it clear that he did not consider her suitable for John. Creative, emotional, and free-spirited, Serena was the opposite of Robert's cold, calculating ideal for a daughter-in-law. John, blinded by love, had ignored his father's comments, but now he was beginning to realize the lengths Robert would go to keep him under control. Wasting no more time, John took off at a run, driving straight to the family mansion. He entered without warning, slamming open the door to Robert's office. His father, visibly irritated, looked up from his papers. "What are you doing here? I thought you had gotten over this habit of barging in unannounced." John, ignoring the dismissive tone, threw Dr. Guzman's report on the table. "Explain it. Explain why Serena survived the accident and why you made me believe she was dead." Robert, taken aback, didn't lose his composure. He leaned back in his chair, his cold, calculating eyes assessing John. "So you finally figured it out," he said, his tone a mix of sarcasm and indifference. "I didn't think it would go this far." "Tell me the truth," John demanded, slapping the table. Robert sighed, as if the situation were just a minor inconvenience in his day. "You've always been so impulsive. Just like your mother," he said with restrained disdain. After a dramatic pause, he continued, "Very well, John. Since you're so obsessed, I'll tell you the truth." John's heart felt like it was about to explode. "Yes, I planned Serena's accident," Robert confessed, his voice as cold as ice. "That woman was a problem, a distraction that kept you from what really mattered, the family business. I couldn't allow you to waste your life on someone who didn't understand our world. Drastic measures had to be taken." Robert's words were like a knife to John's heart. Disbelief gave way to an intense anger, so strong he could barely control it. "You tried to kill her," John shouted, his voice thick with pain. "You tried to kill the woman I love." Robert kept his cool, shaking his head as if John's words were irrelevant. "Serena survived the accident," Robert replied, his tone neutral and measured. "But she lost all her memories. She suffered severe amnesia. This was the perfect opportunity to push her away, to make sure she was out of reach." John's indignation grew, his hands shaking as fury consumed him. "You're a monster," he whispered, his eyes burning with tears. "You have no idea what you've done." Robert, however, showed no remorse. He stood up calmly, looked at John with the same coldness he always carried, and declared, "I did what was necessary to protect you. One day, you'll understand." Unable to bear it any longer, John left the office. Each step felt heavier than the last. Anger was eating away at him, but there was something worse: guilt. How had she allowed Robert to manipulate her life for so long? How had she been so blind? That night, John decided that he would no longer be part of that world of lies and control. He would cut all ties with Robert and dedicate his life to uncovering the truth about Serena. While John struggled to digest the impact of the revelations, Natalie also faced her own demons.
Before we continue, I need to tell you something amazing. Do you want to attract a lot of money into your life? Learn how to do it with the secret content that I will leave in the first pinned comment, and start transforming your financial life. Let's continue.
Fragments of disconnected memories surfaced in her mind, leaving her confused and restless. She saw images of a road, heard the sound of a storm, and felt the impact of something she could not identify. In the background, a male voice sounded urgent, but remained unreachable. These memories not only left her lost, but also brought an inexplicable feeling of emptiness. On that sunny afternoon, Natalie was arranging a bouquet of sunflowers at her flower stand. However, as she touched the soft, vibrant petals, she felt tears spring to her eyes for no apparent reason. Something deep inside her whispered that those flowers had an important meaning, but her mind remained blocked. It was at that moment that John appeared. He looked tense, his eyes heavy with the weight of the revelations he had discovered. Even so, he tried to maintain his composure. "Are you okay?" he asked, with unusual gentleness, noticing the tears in her eyes. Natalie tried to smile, but her voice shook as she answered, "Yes, I'm just remembering things that don't make sense." Natalie's confession sparked something inside John. He knew he was closer to the truth, but still, many pieces of the puzzle were out of place. Inside, he swore that he would do anything to bring back Natalie or Serena, as he believed she really was in the past. Unable to wait any longer, John decided that he had to tell her everything, even if it meant reliving the pain of the past. He returned to the flower stand, but this time he had no intention of buying anything or making casual conversation. Natalie greeted him with a kind smile, but soon noticed the seriousness in his expression. "John, is everything okay? You seem worried." He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Natalie, my real name is John Wilson, and I need to tell you something that may be difficult for you to understand." She frowned in confusion, but remained silent. John seized the moment and continued. "You are not Natalie. Your real name is Serena Lopez. You are my wife. Or at least you were. For over 20 years you were the love of my life, but an accident separated us." Natalie took a step back, as if the words had physically hit him. "What are you talking about? How is that possible?" "It was my father, Robert. He planned everything to separate us because he thought you weren't good enough for me. The accident, it wasn't a coincidence." Her hands were shaking as she looked for a chair to sit down. Her eyes filled with tears. "That doesn't make sense. If what you're saying is true, why don't I remember anything? Why don't I know who you are?" "Because of the accident," John explained, his voice choked with emotion. "You hit your head and suffered amnesia. My father took advantage of that to make sure you never came back to me." Natalie looked up, as if a lost memory was emerging. I recognize you from somewhere. Ever since you started coming here, I've been having dreams. A road, rain, a crash." Natalie took a deep breath and placed a hand on her chest, as if summoning the courage to speak was the hardest part. Her voice came out low, thick with emotion. "I hear a baby crying. Every night. I can't see him, but I feel him there. He cries in my dreams, John." Natalie's words hit John like a bolt of lightning. His heart raced, and the ground seemed to disappear beneath his feet. Trying to process it, he murmured in a shaky voice, "A baby? Are you sure? How is that possible?" Natalie nodded, still struggling with her own emotions. "Yes, it's a sound that wakes me up, that haunts me. I can't explain it, but I feel like it's there. I feel like it's crying for me." John remained silent, his eyes fixed on Natalie, trying to fit those words into a puzzle he didn't even know existed. Then he took a deep breath and sat down across from her. When the accident happened, you were pregnant. We were expecting a baby. Natalie stared at him, her expression reflecting anguish and faint hope. John continued, as if pulling memories from a long-locked place. I always thought the baby didn't survive. They said, after that emergency C-section, he didn't make it. With tears in her eyes, Natalie shook her head. I can't believe it. I don't know how to explain it, but something inside me tells me he's still alive. It's like someone took him. A chill ran down John's spine. Natalie's words resonated in a way he couldn't ignore. If that baby had survived, what would have happened? And, more importantly, who was behind something so cruel? Only one name came to mind: Robert. That same night, John drove to his father's mansion, filled with a determination he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer the obedient son who took Robert's orders. Now, he was ready to face the man who had shaped his life with lies. Without knocking, he entered the office where Robert sat, reviewing papers as if it were just another ordinary evening. When he noticed his son's presence, Robert looked up with disdain. What is it this time? John ignored the arrogant tone. He closed the door behind him and approached. I want the truth, Robert. What happened to the baby Serena was expecting? Robert raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the question, but he kept his cool. I don't know what you're talking about. John's patience ran out. Don't lie to me. What did you do to our son? I want the truth. Robert sighed, as if this were just an inconvenience. That child was never part of the plan, John. He was a problem, just like his mother. John's blood boiled. He moved even closer, anger boiling over. What did you do to him? With a cold look, Robert finally answered. He was put up for adoption. I took care of it personally. It was better that way. He had no place in your life. The words were like a knife. John, overcome with fury, grabbed Robert by the shirt. You're a monster! You destroyed my life. You took away my chance to be happy. Even intimidated, Robert kept his tone distant. I did it for you. That child had no future with you. I did what was necessary. Releasing his father with contempt, John stepped back, his voice shaking with pain and hatred. You took everything from me. But I swear, I will find my son and I will right this wrong. And when I do, you will never hear from me again. Those words ended the conversation. John left the office, leaving Robert alone, surrounded by his coldness and manipulation. Outside, he took a deep breath, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions that were taking over him. His father's revelation had changed everything. Now he had a clear mission: to find his son and give Natalie back the life that Robert had stolen. The discovery that the baby had survived the accident filled him with determination, but also with anguish. More than 2 decades had passed, and the adoption made the search even more complex. Even so, giving up was not an option. Natalie had the right to know the truth, and more than that, to have her son back. As he drove back home, John reflected on the clarity that was finally dawning on him. The life he had built with Robert was nothing more than a big lie, a show that was taking him away from who he really was. He decided, right then and there, that he would cut all ties with his father. But before that, he needed to use the information he had to find his son. His first step was to call Kevin, a trusted friend with connections who could help. John explained everything: Robert's confession, the orphanage, and the vague clues about the adoption. Kevin listened intently and replied seriously, "It won't be easy, John, but we have a starting point. I'll track down the adoption records from that time and contact a social worker who can help us. As Kevin began his search, John knew he had to talk to Natalie. He couldn't hide from her a truth so painful and yet so full of hope. That afternoon, he went to the small flower stand where Natalie worked. He stood there for a moment watching her, his heart aching. Despite everything she had been through, she still radiated a sweetness that touched him deeply. When he approached, Natalie noticed him and with a shy smile said, "John." He nodded and gently took her hand. "We need to talk." He led her to a nearby bench and sat down next to her. John's voice was thick with emotion. "I confronted my father again. I demanded answers about what happened to our son." Natalie's eyes widened and her breathing quickened. "Our son? What did he say?" John held her hand tightly, as if to convey strength. "Robert confessed that the baby didn't die in the accident, as we believed. He was given up for adoption shortly after he was born. He wouldn't give me any more details, but now I know our son is alive. And I will find him, Natalie. I promise you that." Natalie clasped her hand over her mouth, trying to hold back the tears that were streaming down her face. The mix of pain and hope seemed overwhelming. "I always felt like he wasn't dead," she whispered. "I could never remember everything. But there was this emptiness, this feeling that something had been ripped away from me." John hugged her tightly, allowing her to finally release the emotions that had been bottled up for so long. In that moment, Serena knew she wasn't alone in her search. John was by her side, determined to help her recover what had been taken from them. Although she was caught between the fragments of her past and the uncertainty of the present, she found strength in the partnership and the love that was rekindling between them. The following days were filled with tension, but also with progress. Kevin, through his network of contacts, managed to locate Juana, a social worker with access to old records. Together, they found a promising lead. A baby born at the time of the accident had been registered in an orphanage that no longer existed. According to the records, the baby, a girl, was adopted shortly afterward by a childless couple. Juana contacted her adoptive parents, Esteban and Rosa, who, though surprised, agreed to talk to John and Serena. When they finally met, the couple was warm and understanding. "We always knew Paz was special," Rosa said with a nostalgic smile. "When we adopted her, we were just told that her mother couldn't take care of her. That never changed how much we loved her." John and Serena listened with emotion, full of gratitude. "We don't want to take anything away from you," Serena said, her voice breaking. "We just want to meet her, find out how she's doing, and explain the truth." Esteban nodded in agreement. "Paz has the right to know where she comes from. She's a curious and determined young woman. We'll talk to her and let her decide about the reunion." When the day arrived, Paz walked into the meeting place with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Esteban and Rosa accompanied her, assuring her that they would always be by her side, no matter what she decided. Serena could barely contain her emotion when she saw Paz for the first time. There was something in the young woman's eyes that was unmistakably hers. "I was told that you are my biological parents," Paz said, breaking the silence. Serena raised her trembling hands. "Yes, I am your mother. And this is your father, John." Paz looked at them intently, trying to process what she was feeling. Then, a single tear ran down her face. "I always felt like something was missing in my life," she said quietly. "Now I think I know what it was." Serena crossed the room and hugged her tightly, crying with emotion. John soon joined in the hug, feeling that, after so many years, His family was finally complete. The reunion with Paz marked the beginning of a new chapter for everyone. Serena, formerly known as Natalie, decided to embrace her true name and identity, rebuilding her life with John always by her side. Paz, for her part, maintained a close bond with her biological parents while continuing to consider Esteban and Rosa an essential part of her life. From then on, John and Serena visited Paz frequently, sharing meals, conversations, and simple moments that strengthened their family bonds. What had once been fragments of pain and longing now transformed into love, gratitude, and a connection that seemed destined to last forever. Meanwhile, Serena began to dedicate herself to medical treatment to deal with the effects of the trauma she had suffered. John was by her side at every appointment, ensuring that she had access to the best specialists. The doctors were clear in saying that recovering all of her memories was not a guarantee. But Serena was determined to try. With each therapy session, small fragments of her former life emerged more clearly. Happy memories began to surface in her mind. Laughter shared with John during sunny afternoons in the countryside. But along with these sweet memories came more difficult ones. Images of arguments with Robert and a constant sense of danger began to form, bringing with them the weight of what had happened before the accident. After one of these particularly intense therapy sessions, Serena left the office with tears in her eyes. Outside, John was waiting for her. As soon as he saw her, he stood up quickly, worried about what she might be feeling. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. Serena looked at him, and there was something different in her eyes, a mix of sadness and excitement. "I remembered something else," she said, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I remembered the day you told me we were going to have a baby. Your happiness, the way you held me. It all came back to me as if it had happened yesterday." Unable to contain his emotions, John hugged her tightly. He felt his own tears threaten to fall. "That was one of the happiest days of my life, Serena. And now that I have you back, I know we can rebuild that happiness together." As time passed, Serena's memories began to fit together, like pieces of a puzzle. Some parts were still hazy, but John's constant presence and the comfort of his company gave her the strength to move forward. Serena decided to return to the things she loved to do before the accident, like painting. John transformed one of the rooms in the house into a studio for her, a sunny and welcoming space where she could express her emotions in the form of art. John would often stand at the door, silently admiring her as she painted. It was as if her passion and joy for life were returning to her, and that filled him with hope. One afternoon, he approached her as Serena finished another of her works. "What are you painting today?" he asked, with a curious smile. She paused for a moment and looked at him, her eyes shining with tenderness. "I'm painting a future," she replied with a soft smile. "The two of us, together, as a family." John held Serena's hand, feeling a connection that words could not describe. "It doesn't matter how long it took us to get here. The important thing is that we are together now." Paz's visits to their home became the highlight of their weeks. The young woman, full of curiosity and affection, began to open up more and more to them. During a quiet walk in the park, Paz, with a curious look, broke the silence. "What was my mother like before the accident?" she asked, looking at John. He smiled, giving Serena a tender look before answering. "Your mother was exactly as you see her now, strong, talented, and with a huge heart. She always fought for what she loved. And although life tried to tear us apart, here we are again." John's words touched Serena, who approached her daughter and held her hand. "Now that I have you, Paz, It feels like everything finally makes sense again. Paz smiled, pulling them into a warm embrace. In that moment, John knew that despite the hardships and pain, they had rebuilt something wonderful. The following months were filled with moments that strengthened their family bond. Paz graduated from university, and John and Serena were among the audience, applauding with pride. Serena, in turn, organized her first art exhibition in years, where she displayed the work she had created since her return. Each painting told a part of her journey, from the accident to her rebirth as Serena Lopez. The exhibition was a success, but the most important thing for her was to see John and Paz among the guests, supporting her unconditionally. One night, as they shared a quiet dinner at home, Serena held John's hand, her eyes reflecting gratitude and love. "Thank you for not giving up on me, John, for reaching out to me, for fighting to give me back everything I thought I had lost." He caressed her face, shaking his head gently. "I could never give up on you, Serena. You are my life. And now our life together is just beginning." John and Serena's story is a testament to the power of love and resilience. Despite betrayal, loss, and years of separation, the bond between them proved stronger than any adversity. Paz, the daughter they thought they had lost, completed the family they always dreamed of and brought hope for the future. By reclaiming her identity and memories, Serena found peace with herself, her past, and John. She freed herself from the shadows that haunted her, rediscovering that true wealth lies in love and connection with those who truly matter. Together, Serena, John, and Paz showed that, no matter how cruel life can be, there is always room for rebirth and second chances. Thank you very much for following us until the end of this moving story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your opinion with us. Until next time.